And then Sasha Banks wrestled Liv Morgan.
Even I only had so much time.
Yeah. And then here came, I don't know what. Like I said, thank God Walter was on this program, but at least it was less wrestling than we had to watch last few weeks. But here comes Reigns and Heyman and the Usos. And this is always good. And this was good to a point. A great Roman Reigns promo. Did Paul say a word this week? I guess he's resting.
He's been talking less and less since he's been back with Roman Reigns.
Well, that's good. Reigns is A, good at it, and B, I'm sure that Paul probably, his cardio's not what it once was, so he's got to rest for a few weeks every time he does a promo. Great Roman Reigns promo. He's got 2 titles. Now he wants the Usos to have 2. He wants them to unify the tag team title and wants them to bring him the Raw tag team titles as well. And then suddenly, here comes Shaky Nakamura. The music, and he does his whole entrance and gets up in the ring, and Reigns is looking there bemused. And they go face to face, and old Shaky starts to say something, and Reigns just clamps his hand on the microphone and stops him and says, "Hey, I know you need help. I'm gonna be a benevolent tribal chief," or however he phrased it. I mean, he's so condescending. It's great, but he offered him to help Shaky with what he wanted, and he gives him a big hug, and then the Usos double super kick Shaky, and down he goes, and they play the music, and we're off the air. What was that about?
Well, I assume they're setting up Nakamura versus Roman Reigns for maybe Backlash.
Seriously?
Why else would you do this and leave it hanging like that?
That's why I would think that Vince McMahon, if somebody pitched the idea of Roman Reigns versus Shaky Nakamura on pay-per-view, I would think that he would call somewhere the local state authorities and have that person committed rather than do an angle for it.
Well, there's also another problem. There aren't that many guys to program with Roman Reigns right now. It's not the time for Cody. He just did something with Seth Rollins. I don't know when Brock's coming back. It may be for a rematch soon, or it may not be. We really don't know. Drew McIntyre is completely cooled off. Big E's out of action, maybe for good. We don't know. Who is there to really program Roman Reigns with right now?
You know what then I would advise to Vince McMahon? Fire the writers. That's why you're in this situation. There's all kinds of wrestlers out there. They haven't written for them and allowed them to go away. Or who's in charge of your talent relations? They've fired a bunch of wrestlers that are over on the other channel. Every once in a while, you see them. They do well when they're visible. Whose fault is that? And whose fault is your fucking, well, I know whose fault he thinks his developmental is. But the real fault of the developmental is whoever's been running it for the last 6 months that didn't, instead of changing it, I will agree, there were too many smaller guys that were never going to make the main roster. But NXT was a good wrestling program, or a better wrestling program than the other ones. And at least was, in some cases, a place where if a person had natural ability and the ability to listen and learn and understand things, and not just be a mark or a spot monkey, you could advance your game there. But now it's turned into a fucking psychedelic protoplasm of greenness and bad 90s gimmicks. Come to think of it, I think you ought to fire everybody. The writers, the producers, the creators, the talent relations people. Well, not the producers. It's probably not their fault. Just the writers, the talent relations people.
Well, if you're going to clean house, you got to clean house.
Well, in that case, why don't, you know what they ought to do? They ought to just trade. Vince ought to just call Tony Khan and say, Tony, let's just trade companies. I'll give you mine, you give me yours.
You know, there should be talent trades when you have a contract, when you have a guy and you have a couple of years to go into contract and you just either don't want to use him, you're not going to use him, or you just don't think there's anything there. It's too bad there isn't a relationship where you can go, hey, Tony, Do you have anyone with the same length of contract left? Let's trade contracts.
Yeah. Oh my God. You know, in OVW and developmental, I couldn't get them. I couldn't twist their arm and talk them into calling up people that I thought were ready. But God damn it, there were people a number of times that I couldn't get rid of to save my life when I would like, please, if you can't take them, then fire them. But I don't have anything else for them. They've been here forever. Anyway, that was SmackDown. But I'll tell you this, Brian, you know, I've been reading up on some things. And I've found some things that I didn't know. They've been studying these things. And of course, the more you study things, the more things you find out. And if I'd have known this years ago, I could have modified accordingly. Do you realize that headaches, teeth grinding, even digestive issues we've talked about can be caused by stress, Brian? Did you know that?
Makes sense.
And sleeping too little or sleeping too much or undereating or overeating, those things can be caused by stress. Did you know that?
Well, that too makes sense.
Did you know that even doom scrolling that the kids call it, that's where they scroll on their phone just endlessly, that can be caused by stress?
I didn't know that. I didn't know anything about doom scrolling. I thought that's what you called it when Ron Simmons played on his phone.
Well, no, it is even worse because it's caused by stress. And folks, if you're stressed in your life, you know, I've dropped out of society, completely avoid human interaction, because the real cause of stress, Brian, is human beings. They're a deadly organism. They can kill you. I got one particular one that's stressing me right now. I won't tell you what his name is, but you're intimately acquainted with him.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, but anyway, if stress is getting you down and you don't have the option that I had of removing yourself from the human race, folks, maybe it's time to take care of yourself in a world that's telling you to do more, sleep less, and grind all the time. I used to grind my teeth when I was a kid because I was very high-strung even then. Mama Cornette would remark about it all the time. Here's you a reminder, folks, to take care of yourself, do less, and maybe try some therapy with our friends at BetterHelp. Because BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, even live chat sessions. You don't have to see anybody on camera if you don't want to. You can be on the phone. You can chat like the kids do. You can write them letters if you want to. It's more affordable than in-person therapy. No waiting rooms, no trips back and forth across town, and all kinds of iffy weather. Give it a try, folks, and see if online therapy can help lower your stress. Of course, I still recommend completely dropping out of the human race. But if you can't do that, try BetterHelp. Of course, they sponsor this podcast, and our listeners get 10% off their first month's services at BetterHelp.com/JCE. That is BetterHelp.com/JCE. Do one or the other. Completely resign from society or get a hold of BetterHelp.com today.